What's up guys, JP back at you once again, bringing you guys another video. So today's video is actually something that should have been finished months ago, but typical JP fashion, I am late. And I do have a little bit of explaining to do. This was not my intentions. I did want to have all of these videos done and out by around May. It was a lot of editing to do and stuff like that, but I thought I could get them out by May, and then life hit me in the balls and a bunch of life things happened. You know, I was really not in the mood to mess with these, and I was just down in the dumps, period. I was lucky to keep everything else that I had planned together with like the podcast and stuff like that. But anyway, I feel a little bit better in life now, so I decided that I would finish these up. But my camera crapped out on me and I actually lost all the previous recordings. I think I was almost done. I think I only needed to record 3 more, but I needed to edit, you know, like May, June, July, August. My camera died on me. The battery was all messed up and it wouldn't hold a charge, and I lost the footage. I got a new camera, not anything crazy or super better quality or anything, probably around the same, honestly, might be a little bit better, but you know, I got a new camera and I was gonna just say screw this thing, I failed, I'm not gonna finish it, but I decided, you know what, I always do that, I always start series and never finish them, so I'm actually gonna finish this one. It just might take a little while. So with that said, if you're new here, check out the previous videos. This is basically a series where I list off and talk about every single movie I watched in the year 2020, which is quite a lot of movies. Some I don't really even remember at all anymore, but that's the concept here. Go quickly through every movie that I watched, give my brief thoughts and ratings on them. As always, the ratings will be based on my Letterboxd reviews because that's what I'm rolling off of, and you can convert it yourself. I normally rate out of 10, so a 3 out of 5 would be a 6 to a 6.5 out of 10. And with that said, let's jump into the month of May. We watched 54 movies during the month of May, and this is actually May right now at the time that I'm re-recording this, and I can tell you right now I did not watch anywhere close to 54 movies this year in 2021, so pretty impressive. As a whole, my numbers this year are way down. But anyway, let's jump into it. The month of May. First up for the month of May was a stinker. It is Martha from the year 1974. I believe this was a Patreon review that me and Moods reviewed on the 22 Shots podcast. Normally when we're talking films that me and Moods watch and review, usually we agree that it's both good, or we disagree, one of us thinks it's good and one of us thinks it's bad. Not always, but a lot of times, especially when you were dealing with retro films. This film from 1974, we actually both agreed that it sucked. We did not like it at all. It was more of like a thriller. I don't even really remember it. It was from another country. I can't remember if it was even in English, but I know that the director, I think, is like a pretty artsy, established director. I didn't like the movie at all. I gave it a 0.5 out of 5. Then I watched Vivarium from the year 2019, getting its wide release in 2020, and this movie was actually really good, starring Jesse Eisenberg and Imogen Poots. It's a really solid film. It feels like an extended Twilight Zone episode, and I really like that. That usually works for me. Sometimes it could feel a little too long. This one didn't. I like the sci-fi nature of the film. The stuff with the cuckoo bird and how it like tied into the concept of the movie was really neat. I gave that one a 4 out of 5. Then I watched Fritz Lang's M from the year 1931. I'd seen this film once before when I was watching a bunch of noir films. This is, a lot of people consider it sort of an early template for what would become noir films. It's pretty dark. There's a child murder right at the beginning. It's really well shot. I really like this movie. If you've never seen Fritz Lang's M, definitely check it out. It's really solid. I gave that a 4.5 out of 5. Then we have Blood-Sucking Freaks from the year 1976. This is a Troma release. This movie I watched one time when I was prepping for the 1976 top 10, and I didn't really care for it. This time I watched it with the Joe Bob Briggs commentary on The Last Drive-In. Chris Jericho was a guest, and it really made me appreciate the movie a lot more for like what it was at the time, you know, 1976, and sort of what it brought in that you know, violence and gratuity. And I really got to give Joe Bob credit, and even Chris Jericho, who, like, I'm not the biggest fan of wrestling or anything like that, but I never knew he was such a horror fan, and that was really cool. I gave it a 3 out of 5. And then on 22 Shots, we decided to cover the entire I Spit on Your Grave franchise, so starting off with 1978's I Spit on Your Grave, aka Day of the Woman. Now, I've always liked this film, and maybe even liked it a lot, but watching it this time with a critical eye, I hadn't watched this movie in years, I really fell in love with it. It's pretty phenomenal. It has so much going on. I think a lot of people, when they think about this movie, they think about it in a certain way and think that it's, you know, just kind of garbage, but, you know, important for film history. But if you actually watch it, it's a really good movie. And me, Dave, and Moods all felt the same. It made our Hall of Fame, so we really liked it. And I gave that a 5 out of 5. Then I watched Savage Vengeance from the year 1993. Now, a lot of people don't know about this film. It's a shot-on-video film, and it is a unofficial sequel to I Spit on Your Grave, and it actually has, I wouldn't really say stars, but it has Camille Keaton in it. This movie's horrible. You know, your ears might have perked up like, oh, cool, you know, Camille Keaton, unofficial I Spit on Your Grave, but then you probably heard shot on video and you're like, oh. But it's not good. There's a clothed rape scene in it. It's just bad. I think we all gave it like a 0.5 out of 5 on that show. It's a bad movie. Then I watched I Spit on Your Grave from the year 2010. This, of course, is the remake. I was the only one that really liked this one a lot on that show. Basically, Dave and Moods really didn't care for it. I thought it was very brutal. The acting was a bit spotty, but I thought it was pretty solid. It was a good remake. It kind of has a weird look to it, the way that it was shot and stuff like that. It's kind of gritty and grimy, but it's also a kind of an ugly aesthetic. I think some people might not like it, but I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 out of 5. Then I believe I was working on the summer series for Duncan McLeish's podcast Under the Stairs. We were covering the decade of the 2000s, and I watched One Missed Call from the year 2003. Yeah, I mean, this is a really solid movie, directed by Takashi Miike. It definitely screams that era where, you know, cell phones and technology was starting to integrate into horror, sort of that modern era. It's scary. It's a good solid ghost film. I gave that a 4 out of 5. Then I watched Final Destination 2 from the year 2003. Now, it'd been a while since I'd watched the Final Destination films, but 2 has always been my favorite, and after watching it, I think that still would hold strong. It is a very good movie. I love that series. I wish they would make one every year. It's just so fun seeing what kind of deaths they come up with. It's like the closest thing we had to really a modern, wide released slasher series in that era. And I really like those movies, man. Final Destination 2 is definitely the best. The car crash is legendary. The opening death scene is so good. There's a lot of good moments to that, and I love how it ties into the first film. It's very good. I gave that a 4 out of 5. Then I was still working my way through the Star Wars films, and I got to Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, from the year 2005. Now, this was actually the very first Star Wars film I ever seen. Me and my cousin were visiting family members in Maryland, spending a couple weeks in the summer, and we were just trying to find things to do every day, and they dropped us off at the mall and was like, here, have fun, and we were like, let's go see a movie. None of the movies that were playing really seemed that interesting, so we went with Star Wars, which neither of us had seen any of them, and we watched it, and we both ended up really liking it. And it's sort of a weird Star Wars movie for it to be your first one, because regardless of how you start the series, if you start from the beginning, you know, chronologically, or you know, the original series, it's the 6th one, and if you do it the other way, it's the 3rd one. So it's a really weird place to start, but it is one of my favorite Star Wars films. I think the Anakin Skywalker story is a lot cooler than the Luke Skywalker story. I know that's blasphemous to Star Wars fans, but I prefer that story. And yeah, it's pretty good. I give that a 4.5 out of 5. Then we roll back to the I Spit on Your Grave movies with I Spit on Your Grave 2 from the year 2013. This one was probably like the most sick out of them. I remember it just feeling very like mean-spirited. I mean, they all do, but this one I thought was pretty mean-spirited. It's in a weird location. I don't remember a ton about it, but it was pretty brutal, and I like this one as well. I give that one a 3.5 out of 5. Then I was prepping for the 1991 show still, and I watched the Howling Six the Freaks. Now, years ago on 22 Shots, we watched all the Howling films and reviewed them, all 8 of them, and I thought they were mostly garbage. I think The Freaks was one I liked a little more out of the sequels. And watching it this time, you know, it's not great or anything, but I think I liked it a little bit more when I didn't have to watch all 8 of them in a week. So I thought it was, you know, it was okay. Sort of reminded me of a Full Moon film. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5. Then I watched Wrong Turn from the year 2003, and to me this one held up a ton. I really enjoy this movie. I think that it is actually scary. I remember the very first time I watched it, I was home alone late at night back in like 2004, and I lived out in the wooded area, and I turned it on and my eyes were glued to the screen, and it was just such a good experience. Actually, probably one of my favorite memories of, you know, being home alone late at night watching a horror movie. And yeah, I think it still holds up. I think it's really good. It's really scary. I think it's the best in the series for sure, and I give that a 4 out of 5. Then we have I Spit on Your Grave 3 Vengeance is Mine from the year 2015, and this is probably the most different of all the I Spit on Your Grave films, because up until this point they all sort of followed a similar blueprint where a girl or a woman would go out into an area and be raped and tortured, and then she would get revenge. But this one's different. It follows the girl from the first remake, the remake rather, and it's sort of more of a what happens after that traumatic rape and revenge, and how they cope with it. She's in a support group and stuff. She meets another girl. Very interesting movie. I actually really liked it. I thought it was a cool, refreshing breath of fresh air for this series that was mostly the same. And I gave that a 4 out of 5. Then continuing with 1991, we have Scanners 2, The New Order. I think this movie's pretty fun. My co-host would not agree with me. It reminds me of like an X-Men movie, and I kind of like that about it. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Then we have Scanners 3, The Takeover. I'm not really a huge fan of this one. I thought I liked it more when I'd seen it the first time, but both of these came out in 1991, and this one is definitely the least good. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5. Then we have I Spit on Your Grave, Deja Vu from the year 2019. Now, when this got announced, I was pretty interested because it was a sequel to the original I Spit on Your Grave, starring Camille Keaton, directed by Mir Zarchi, who directed the first film. So I was like, wow, this is kind of interesting. Mir Zarchi's super old now, but let's see what happens here. And this movie is an atrocity. It is horrible. It's not good at all. I couldn't believe it. It's so damn long, it's not even funny. In fact, we pretty much don't even acknowledge that it exists because of how awful the movie is. I strongly believe that Mir Zarchi did not direct this film, and he was just sort of like his family did, or his son or something, and he was just kind of there for name. It's bad. I gave it a 0.5 out of 5. Then we have Maniac from the year 1980. I watched this on the last drive-in with Joe Bob Briggs, and it's an absolute classic. It's one of my favorite horror films. I think it's one of the best horror films out there. In the grand scheme of things, it's sort of a very different slasher. The kills are great. Joe Spinell is phenomenal, and truly one of the best horror performances I think that's out there. He just plays a complete weirdo, and he's really good at it. Very good movie. Love Maniac. Joe Bob, of course, is great. I give that one a 5 out of 5. And then I watched Heathers from the year 1988. This was also part of the last drive-in. I've actually never seen this film before. It stars, what is her name? I forget. She's in Beetlejuice. Everybody knows her. She's super famous. Like, I know her, but I can't remember her damn name. Oh, nope. What the hell's her name? It's Winona Ryder. Damn it. Anyway, I thought the movie was pretty good. 3.5 out of 5. Then we have The Wretched from the year 2019, getting its wide release in the year 2020. This movie was actually pretty good. I wasn't in love with it like some people, but it's good old witch horror, which I'm a big fan of. And yeah, it's pretty good. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Then we have Cabin Fever from the year 2002. This was the film that we called 2003 for the summer series based on Duncan's roles. Cabin Fever, favorite of mine, absolutely love it. Can watch it probably a million times, never get sick of it. Eli Roth's first film. It's gross, it's nasty, it's funny, great characters, weird set pieces and story pieces that are kind of just out there, like the whole end with the what you assume is the racist white guy, and also, you know, like the bowling flashback story and just weird stuff in it. It's a great movie. I love it. I give that a 4 out of 5. Then I watched Critters 3 from the year 1991 in prep for the podcast, and Critters 3, kind of known for having Leonardo DiCaprio in, I believe, his first role. If not his first, then definitely one of his first. It's Critters, but in an apartment complex. I really like it. It's a lot of fun. I give that one a 3.5 out of 5. Then we have Brain Damage from the year 1988. This is Frank Henenlotter, and I watched it as part of the last drive-in. I love this movie. I think it is such a cool movie. I love what Frank Henenlotter did there. It's definitely his best film, and I love Basket Case, but Brain Damage is so good. I love the whole drug metaphor of the movie. Elmer is great. I love the aesthetic and the blues and the colors and stuff. It's just a fantastic movie. Awesome to hear Joe Bob give it praise too. I give that one a 4.5 out of 5. Then, if the I Spit on Your Grave franchise review that we did on 22 Shots wasn't dark enough, we decided to add the Human Centipede to the list, and we covered the Human Centipede trilogy. The first one being the Human Centipede first sequence from the year 2009. I remember when I first watched this movie, me and my friend were over her house late at night, and we decided to check out some Netflix. It was on there. I hadn't heard anything about it, which is pretty lucky considering like how it became sort of pop culture. A little viral there. And we watched it, and we really couldn't believe what we were seeing, and it was really effective on me. Like, you don't really see much. It's mostly in your imagination, and that's kind of what I liked about that film, is everybody said how gross it was, but you really don't see a whole lot. It's super effective for me. The German scientist doctor guy is super creepy and weird. I think he died, rest in peace. Just a really unique and weird movie, but it really works for me. I give that a 4 out of 5. And then I checked out Violence Voyager from the year 2018. This was another Patreon pick, and man, this movie's weird. It's done in this weird sort of like animation, but like also like practical real effects. It's a very strange movie, but I definitely recommend checking it out. It's super unique and very cool. I gave that a 4 out of 5. And then we have the Human Centipede 2 full sequence from the year 2011. I believe this one was titled 100% Medically Inaccurate or something like that, where the first one was 100% medically accurate. The Human Centipede 2, when it came out, I tried to watch it, and I felt like it was exactly what the first film was being described as, where it was just like shock value for shock value's sake. And I actually turned it off. I never finished it. So this was actually my first time watch, and I definitely appreciated the film much more in terms of like its meta-ness, and Martin is a weirdo, and it's a good movie. I really like this one as well, and I gave that a 4 out of 5. Then I watched the Human Centipede 3 final sequence from the year 2015, and yeah, this one's not really good, but I didn't hate it. It's kind of a weird way to end the trilogy, but I didn't hate it. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5. Then we have 1BR from the year 2019 getting its wide release in 2020. Again, this one was like okay. It was decent. It's a girl in a 1-bedroom bath house apartment, and you know there's like a cult thing. It was a little rough around the edges, but I thought it was good. I gave it a 3 out of 5. Then I watched Names on the Cup from the year 2017. This was just a little NHL documentary about the Stanley Cup and like how the names are put on and stuff like that. I thought it was cool. Nothing amazing, but it was cool. and I gave that a 3.5 out of 5. Then I watched Deep Red from the year 1975 with the Joe Bob Briggs Last Drive-In commentary. I'm a big Argento fan. Like, I love Argento. He's in my top 5 favorite filmmakers of all time. Deep Red is not one of my favorites, which is weird because most people love it the most. I do think it's like a good movie, but it just doesn't connect with me the way his other films do. And I feel like there's some stuff in there that doesn't make sense, which is normal for giallos and stuff like that, but I don't know, it just doesn't connect with me like his other films. You know, it's still pretty good. I give it a 4 out of 5. Then on 22 Shots, we decided to cover the Wreck franchise, which I had never seen a single one besides Quarantine, which is the remake. Wreck from the year 2007 is pretty damn good. I mean, this is one of probably the best found footage films ever. These people get called to an apartment complex. It's this sort of infected virus thing that's going around. It's really, really scary, really good. I love how they sort of tie in what's behind this infection into a territory where you don't expect. They follow it up more in the sequel. But yeah, it's really a really good movie. I give it a 5 out of 5. Then we have Wreck 2 from the year 2009, and this is a direct sequel. I like that about it. I think it is a step down from the first Wreck film, but I really still like it, and it's a good follow-up, and they expand upon what they started in the first Wreck film. I think it's definitely a very good sequel. I give that a 4 out of 5. Then I watched Scary Movie from the year 1991. Pretty cool film. American Genre Film Archive put it out. I always mess that up. AGFA. And yeah, it's a fun 90s haunted house. Not haunted house as in like a ghost house, but like haunted house as in you go to a haunted house and get scared. But not like a real haunted house, like one that, you know, like around Halloween time where you go to a haunted house. You get what I'm saying? 3 out of 5. Then we have Wreck 3 Genesis from the year 2013. And yeah, this one drops the found footage thing, but I still kind of like it. The rage virus thing starts at like a wedding. It's pretty good. Like, I think the cinematography's good. I like aspects of it. It's sort of a love story that I thought kind of worked. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Then we have Blood Ties from the year 1991. I don't really remember this one. I know it was a vampire film. I think it was like pretty decent. I gave it a 3 out of 5. Then I watched Don't Run from the year 2019, getting its release in 2020. I don't really remember a whole lot about it. I think it followed a kid. It's really loose in my memory. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5. Then we have Wreck 4 Apocalypse from the year 2014. And yeah, this one is more of a sequel to the first two. I think it brings back the found footage thing, if my memory serves me correct. I thought it was a little weak. It's set on a boat. Really didn't impress me. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5. Then I watched Quarantine from the year 2008. And yeah, this one is actually pretty solid to me. It might help that I watched it before Wreck. I do think there are some aspects that aren't as good as Wreck, but I do like Jennifer Carpenter, and they spend a little bit more time at the firehouse before the movie. It's both a good and a bad thing. I think it's good for a remake because it gives you something a little bit different and a little bit more. But the first film, it works not doing that because how you just get thrust into this chaos. A lot of people don't like Quarantine, but I do. I give it a 4 out of 5. Then we have Quarantine 2 Terminal from the year 2011. This one, I believe, drops the found footage gimmick too. It's not great, but I actually kind of liked it. It's set at an airplane terminal. I don't remember a whole lot about it, but I do remember thinking it was much better than I expected. I gave that a 3 out of 5. Then we have Trancers from the year 1984. Decided to check this one out. Never seen it before. It's a full moon film. Pretty good. It's like a sci-fi film. I liked it. 3.5 out of 5. Then we have Trancers 2, The Return of Jack Death from the year 1991. Plan on watching this for 1991, so I watched the first film. Yeah, this one is pretty cool too. I really like the first two Trancers films. 3.5 out of 5. Then I watched Witness Infection from the year 2020. This is like a zombie slash mob movie. Thought it was okay, nothing special. 2.5 out of 5. Then we have Exorcism at 60,000 Feet from the year 2019, getting its wide release in 2020. I didn't really care for this one that much. It felt as if like it was attempting to be like a trauma type film, but not as good. I don't know, man. Well, not as good compared to like the best trauma films. The comedy just didn't really work for me. I thought I was gonna like it because at the beginning I thought it was like pretty good. But yeah, it just didn't work for me. I gave it a 1.5 out of 5. Then we have Dance of the Dead 2008, and this one is pretty solid little zombie film. I'd heard good things about it, but I would consider it a little bit of a gem in terms of zombie films. Pretty funny, you know, zombie comedy. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Then we have The Golden Years from the year 1991. This was a like mini series. I think it was like 3 episodes or 6 episodes. I can't really remember. I think this was supposed to be the launch point for a series, like a season 2. I don't really remember much about it. It's based on a Stephen King thing, or it's a Stephen King story that he wrote for TV. It just wasn't very good. It was kind of boring. It was really boring. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5. Then we have The Unborn from the year 1991. I thought this one was pretty good. I like movies that deal with babies and fertility and stuff like that. Pretty cool movie. Definitely a little bit of a highlight of 1991. I'd never seen it before, but yeah, pretty good. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. Then I watched 976 Evil from the year 1988. It's been a while since I seen this film. Decided to check it out again. And yeah, it's pretty solid. I really like a lot of like the horror references and posters and stuff in the movie. It's pretty cool. I gave that a 3.5 out of 5. Then we have Sometimes They Come Back from the year 1991. This was a Stephen King adaptation. I really like this movie. I always have. It's one that I think it was a TV movie maybe, but I've always just had a thing for it. It's a very depressing movie. It doesn't really have much happiness going on in it. It's about a guy who's really depressed over the murder of his brother when he was a kid and being haunted by the people that killed him. It just works for me. I've always loved it. It did make my top 10 of 1991. Very good movie. I give that a 4 out of 5. Then we have Strays from the year 1991. Now this was a childhood staple of mine. This used to run on the USA Network all the time. And it's basically a killer cat film. It's really solid though. I've always liked it. It's a little ridiculous, like even at the end, like the way the cats are like jumping at the people and stuff. It's ridiculous, but I just always liked it. I'm glad it got a Blu-ray release from Scream Factory because it was stuck on VHS. But I've always loved this movie. I always watch it every few years. It's pretty cool. 3.5 out of 5. Then I watched Dolly Dearest from the year 1991. This movie gets like an unfair hate. Like, I know it has like a sort of a cult following, but a lot of people think it's like so bad it's good. I think it's a legitimately good movie. I think it's a good killer doll film. I think the animatronics and the face and stuff are really good on the doll. It has the woman who stars in Pet Sematary in it. I think it's a really solid movie. Vinegar Syndrome put it out on Blu-ray. Good transfer. Good movie. 3.5 out of 5. Then we have Leprechaun Returns from the year 2018. This won't be the last time you guys ever hear me talk about this movie because I pretty much watch it at least once a year. Sometimes twice. I was so happy with this film because I love the Leprechaun series. It's one of my favorites ever. And it's been dead for so long. Of course there was Leprechaun Origins, but it was such a huge disappointment. It's not the same thing. I can appreciate like going in a different direction and trying something more of a creature feature, but it's not Leprechaun. And they made a new Leprechaun film, a return, a sequel to the original Leprechaun, and it even had Ozzy in it. And yeah, Warwick Davis wasn't back, but the Landon dude, I forget his full name, but he did a phenomenal job filling those little shoes of Warwick Davis. I'm kind of in love with that movie. Leprechaun Returns is a movie that I really do love. And it's not that good, but it's just that I love that it happened. I love that I got something that I thought was completely dead. I thought I'd never get another Leprechaun film in the vein of the old Leprechaun films. And I got it. And the only issue I have is, where the hell is a sequel? Where? 3.5 out of 5. Then we have Becky from the year 2019 getting its wide release in 2020. Now, this movie had a lot of hype. I seen it on a lot of top 10 lists last year. Kevin James playing a neo-Nazi and sort of like this Home Alone style little girl messing these Nazis up. It was okay. I liked it. But I just don't see what the big hype was about it. It was alright. And honestly, like, a lot of people praise Kevin James for like going out of type and stuff like that, but I felt it was tame. I felt like he was tame. It didn't feel like he really did anything that extreme. Just playing a neo-Nazi that you can't even really tell. He could have been just a burglar. I don't know. I thought it was okay, but I didn't love it. I gave it a 3 out of 5. Then we have Zombie from the year 2019. And now I got the Blue Underground 4K, and I remembered watching the Zombie 3-disc Blu-ray version that Blue Underground put out and being like blown away by the transfer. So I had to pop in the 4K, and I gotta say, guys, wow, what a beautiful transfer. I fell in love with the movie when I watched it on that 3-disc Blu-ray. I'd always liked it, but something about that transfer just popped for me that night, and I fell in love with it. And even more with the 4K. Like, it's just such a good movie. I love the atmosphere. I just love it. And I think that's with Italian cinema in general. Like, I was never massively impressed when I first started watching Italian cinema, but as I got more experience with it, I learned to love a lot of the things that people have been talking about for years that I maybe didn't see on first watches. Like Zombie, I thought was like, oh, okay, it's no Dawn of the Dead or anything, but you know, it's a pretty good zombie film. And then the next watch, I'm like, you know what, this actually got something going on. Yeah, like the plot and story isn't like that amazing or anything, but there's so many cool moments in the movie, and the zombies look cool in the atmosphere. And then I watch it another time, and I'm like, man, I love every sequence in this movie, from the fat zombie on the boat till they're walking across the bridge at the end. And it just built up and up and up. I love it. 4.5 out of 5. I don't know why I didn't give it a 5. I probably should have. And then finally for this part, guys, we have 1991's 976 Evil 2. And this one's like a pretty decent sequel. It's nothing special, but I liked it enough. So that is 976 Evil 2 with a 3 out of 5, and that is May. 54 movies watched in May. Pretty impressive. Usually, like, my max is like 60, right around there. So I approached my max, which is like 2 a day, pretty much. But I hope you guys enjoyed. Give me some time. I'll have June out, July, and so forth. If you haven't watched the first 4, please go back and check them out. I put a ton of work into these, and I really appreciate it if you guys check them out. It really means a lot. And with that said, I hope you guys have a nice day. And by the way, the aunt from Sleepaway Camp died today at the time of me recording this. So rest in peace to her, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.